All right, so we're here outside the city of Nimes, a few miles away, and we're at the Pont du Gard. So this is a testament to the Romans' marvelous engineering, and this is something that we're going to take a look at in the way that geography and access to water can kind of impact the development of civilizations. So we got to start by just kind of paying tribute to the marvel of engineering that the Pont du Gard is. But when we look at the city of Nimes, Nimes itself is a very important Roman city. It's actually called France's Rome. So part of the reason it was so important is when the Romans expanded the Gallic tribes in that region, they established Nimes 500 years ago. When Julius Caesar came and conquered that was an important trading center, and it's how they maintained control of that entire area. So when they came into control of this city, they had to kind of figure out a way to support the people that live there. There's 50 to 60,000 people that live in the city of Nimes. So how do we actually get them water? Well, what they found was 14 miles away from the city of Nimes, in a little place called Uza, they had a reservoir of water that was 57 feet above the city. So now the only challenge is, how do we get the water from where it was to where it wasn't? And what they came up with is a very elaborate aqueduct. Now, this is only part of it, and it's actually some of the most magnificent part, because most of the aqueduct is actually on ground level or actually goes underground. So the city is 14 miles away from the water, but they traced the landscape. So the aqueduct itself is actually 31 miles long. Now, this is the most impressive part because it keeps it on a fairly flat level. It's only going down over that entire 31-mile span. It only drops 44 feet. Now, if you do the math on how much that drop is, that means every mile it goes down 21 inches. To put it a different way, every football field, it goes down 3/4 of an inch. So from the left side to the right side, it goes down a grand total of 2.5 inches. Now, that's really important because if you're moving water from a reservoir to the city, if it goes too fast, you're going to drain it and it's going to potentially spill over the sides, and it could potentially drain the reservoir faster than Mother Nature can actually refill it. If it goes too slowly, it's going to form a blockage and you're not going to actually get the water to the people that you need it. The Romans perfectly constructed this aqueduct so that 44 million gallons of water every single day made its way, but it never fully drained the reservoir. Now, there's another part in Nimes that we'll take a look at where we actually see the water well and how they were actually able to pump it out to various parts of the city. But from the left side to the right side, it's unbelievable the way that this is done. Now, some of the facts that we can kind of point out about the Pont du Gard: it's the second tallest structure in the Roman Empire. So this entire structure is 155 feet tall. The only structure in the Roman Empire that's taller than this is the Colosseum, and it's only 6 feet taller. Now, if you look at the way that these arches are constructed, arches are something that the Romans used very, very commonly, because the strength of the arch is not just the fact that it can support a wide load, but the fact that everything underneath the arch is completely empty, which means it's a very light way to build a bridge. So you get the strength of a wall without the weight of a wall, which means you can go a little bit higher. The width of the arch in the middle, specifically, this is the widest arch in the entire Roman Empire. And if you look at the way that the river's kind of constructed, you can see pretty evidently why they chose that spot in particular. It's the narrowest part of the river, and even when it floods, because the incline of these rocks, it never really gets to a point where that's kind of under threat. Now, some of the other interesting things that we can know about the Pont du Gard is the entire structure was built without the use of mortar. The Romans had a special type of concrete because they mixed volcanic ash from the side of a volcano in with their concrete, which means that the concrete that they used, they could build structures that would stay underwater, which is why you see some of these bridges in water where no other civilization could do that. So when we look at this, it's not only just the fact that they built it, but the fact that they built it without that special concrete. There's only 2 places they use concrete and mortar in the entire structure. It's on the bottom of the foundations to make sure that it was waterproof so it wouldn't erode underneath the arches and it wouldn't collapse. And then on the very, very top, because all these bottom 2 tiers are just support. There's no purpose other than to support the weight. The top tier, it's actually a little bit more sensitive, which is why you see the arch span get a little bit more narrow. And then what happens is the channel is a T-shaped channel. So you can see on the top, there is a roof, right? They would have covered this to try and prevent any sort of interference and dilution in the water so that no plants, no birds, no anything that you wouldn't want on your water system to get in there, it wouldn't be in there. But over time, essentially, what happened was after the Roman Empire fell, the barbarian hordes came down and they kind of raided this area. And then future civilizations found different uses for the stone, so they started taking pieces away, which is why it's an incomplete part now. Top of the aqueduct, they would have coated this entire channel with waterproof concrete so that the water flowing through would not have had the ability to seep out. But over the centuries of buildup, you can actually see the original stone versus the buildup on top of it, including the biological growth. Eventually, over time, parts of the channel were removed. They repurposed the stone in other areas after the fall of the Roman Empire. And now you can take a walking tour through, but unfortunately we're not going to be able to do that today.